The Senate Budget Committee saying today it wants a price tag on the bank rescue plan. The Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner telling it that he just didn't know how much the rescue plan will ultimately cost America. Should we trust the Treasury Secretary to make the right decisions with your taxpayer money? Legendary investor Jim Rogers says no way. He joins us on the phone from Singapore, where it is early. Jim, thank you very much for joining us. I get the impression with the lack of detail that we don't necessarily have a real plan right now. What do you think?
Brian, we don't have a plan. They haven't had a plan for 2 years. I mean, this goes from one stumble bomb to another stumble bomb. And unfortunately, the American taxpayer is just getting taken advantage of right, left, and center to bail out a few people on Wall Street.
You know, I remember a couple of years ago, I don't know if you remember, my previous job, we interviewed, and you said to me when Fannie Mae was at about $100 a share that it was going to be wiped out, which it basically has been. You've seen this coming. So I'll ask you, what would you do?
Well, it was about $60 a share. I'm very, very, very flattered you remember, but it's only about $60 a share, and it did go bankrupt, despite the fact that Mr. Geithner stepped in to bail it out. They should have just let the thing liquidate. We are now on the hook for trillions. That's with a T, Brian, trillions of dollars for all these people that Geithner keeps bailing out, AIG, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. I would have let them go bankrupt. With the way the world is supposed to work, when people fail, they're supposed to fail, not supposed to be stepped in by people like Mr. Geithner, by bureaucrats like Mr. Geithner, and put up taxpayer money, trillions of taxpayer money, in order to save his friends. You know, they're all driving their Lamborghinis, and he's just supporting them rather than worrying about the taxpayers.
Let's talk about Mr. Geithner. We have heard the president say things like the failed policies of the past. Fair enough. Mr. Geithner was at the New York Fed when much of the original TARP was being created, and he was an advisor of sorts to Bill Clinton when the housing bubble was inflated. Is he the wrong guy for this job?
If you ask me, he's totally the wrong guy for the job. As you just point out, he's been around for at least 15 years in all of these things, and everything he's done, every policy he's participated in has turned out to be wrong. He was the New York Fed. Brian, you know the New York Fed is supposed to be the people supervising Wall Street, supervising the banking industry more than anybody else. Well, that's where all the problems have come from. It's his responsibility, and all of a sudden they've given him the keys to the Treasury.
And it's even more ironic, is it not, that you've got the president basically bashing Wall Street and the banks, but Geithner working behind the scenes with the banks, and some saying he's too favorable to them. How do we square that?
Well, because he is too favorable to them. I mean, he won't let anybody go bankrupt. You remember Bear Stearns? He was at the time when Bear Stearns was collapsing, everybody rushed in and said, "Oh, Mr. Geithner saved Bear Stearns." Why did he save Bear Stearns? Because he wanted to save all their bonuses. All of these guys got billions of dollars of bonuses, which they wanted to keep. So Mr. Geithner stepped in and saved them. Now, in retrospect, it was a disaster to save Bear Stearns. It was all of this. All of these policies have been the wrong policies, making exactly the same mistakes the Japanese made in the 1990s by bailing out everybody in sight, not letting anybody fail, having zombie banks, having zombie companies. Mr. Geithner was even in Japan in the 1990s, and what is so mind-boggling to me is he was on TV the other day and said the only problem with Japan was they didn't spend enough money. That is absolutely claptrap. They did nothing but spend money. You go back and look at what the Japanese did. They spent trillions of dollars of yen on bridges to nowhere, tunnels to nowhere, highways to nowhere, but they wouldn't let people fail. They propped up the system. Mr. Geithner is doing exactly the same thing.
And
He's bailing out his friends and spending money on nothing.
Very quickly, and Japan got hyperinflation here. Every time in history, you go back to England financing its wars, 300 years ago, we had hyperinflation, which led to the value and increase of hard assets. Do you want to buy gold? I mean, what do we do then?
Well, ultimately, of course, we're going to have serious inflation in the United States. It's unfortunate. We all can see it coming. Every economist in the world can see it coming. Traditionally, you buy real assets, hard assets, as you call them, real things, because paper money is going to become more and more suspect and more under duress.
Jim Rogers, I know it's early out there. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your schedule, Jim, to join us here on Fox Business. Appreciate it.